Alright, so we got the 11-13 spoilers, and we're seeing what Mars encountered at the end of the previous chapter, and it turns out that it's Vegapunk's massive brain. Yeah, I know, maybe it was obvious. I'll get into that. We're also seeing who is saving Bonney from Venus, and it's not Zoro. It's Sanji? Yeah, I know. We'll get into that too. And then at the end, we're finding out what Vegapunk's message to the world was, and it's pretty much that the world is going to end possibly soon or eventually. A lot of stuff to go over, and of course, let's go over the previous chapter real quick. So Venus was able to take out all of the pacifistas on Egghead with the quickness. Then Frankie and Bonney took out two of the vice admirals that were gatekeeping them from going with the giant pirates. Then we saw York give Mars instructions on how to disable Vegapunk's message. Then we saw that Stussy was going to essentially stay behind on Egghead so that she could lower the barrier at the last second to allow the Thousand Sunny with the Straw Hats to escape. Then when we cut to the Straw Hats, Usopp basically said that the coup de burst was ready for the Thousand Sunny to make its escape, but it wouldn't be able to travel far enough to get off of Egghead like they originally needed that Vegaforce 1 robot to help them with that. So then Edison, one of Vegapunk's satellites, said that he would help them in some way to achieve this, and he like jumped off of the lava phase and went through the barrier. Then we saw Luffy with Dory and Brocky continue to fight against Jupiter and Mercury. Then we saw Saturn approaching the Straw Hats at the top of the lava phase. Then, like we said, Venus encountered Bonney and Frankie, and then at the very end we saw Mars entering Punk Records. So let's get into that. Mars is in shock after seeing Vegapunk's big head in a tank. Mars destroys the special Dendenmushi, but it appears to be the fake. Alright, so like I said in my previous review, I knew that I was going to be wrong about that. It was probably going to be something obvious, and it turns out that was very much the case. I was speculating about literally everything except it being Vegapunk's brain, despite me in that video saying that Punk Records contains Vegapunk's brain. I just thought it was going to be something more fantastical. And also, you know, when we are going, or at least when I'm going over these spoilers, I'm only going off of text. After I was actually able to read the chapter, I was like, oh, yeah, I guess it's kind of obvious at that point. I don't know, reading the text that we got, it made it seem like more of a nefarious thing going off. I just didn't expect it to be so mild at this point. But yeah, he's just seeing his brain in the tank, because when Vegapunk ate that brain fruit or whatever it's called, the more information that he gained, the bigger his head got, to the point of where he can no longer like maintain it. So he like literally cut it off and put it inside of that big egg on Egghead, which is Punk Records. So he kind of created like his own proprietary internet via using that method, I guess. And then we see that Mars is destroying the distribution Dendenmushi, but of course it's a fake, which we assumed it would be. Going further, we could see people's reaction around the world talking about Vegapunk's message. Then the countdown ends and Vegapunk's message starts. The Gorosei have no clue what Vegapunk will say. They have no clue what he's going to say. I mean, they're trying to stop him for a specific reason because he has so much dirt on them. So I think they should have somewhat of an idea. Even though what he ultimately says is not what I expected. Sanji arrives at the place that Nusjuro is, and he attacks him. So yeah, like I was saying, it's actually Sanji that is protecting Bonney, and I guess Frankie to a lesser extent here. Also Atlas is there, from Venus. I thought it was going to be Zoro because, you know, Zoro seems like he has some kind of connection to Venus, and we also talked about how it could parallel to Bonney saving Zoro at Sabaody, but no, it is Sanji, and it's fine because it is inevitable that Zoro will fight Venus, so unless Oda wants to set it up here or later on, it doesn't matter. It seems like, you know, it's bound to happen anyway, but maybe Sanji is going to job to Venus here so that Venus seems like a more formidable match for Zoro possibly, or they just clash or something, I don't know. Maybe we'll get more information in the full summary. I don't think they're fighting or clashing here. I mean, they could. Subscribe for that if you haven't already. I'll be going going over the full summary if we get it tomorrow, which seems likely. Vegapunk says that he must die due to the bad things he did. That's why he prepared the message to start when he dies. So the bad things that he did, joining the world government, giving them all of the technology that they have to continue their fascist regime. Many lives have been taken and much suffering has been caused because of what Vegapunk has done, despite him being such a good guy, on the surface. So I guess that's what he's referring to here. So I guess he's like making himself out to be a martyr. Saturn arrives to Usopp's group. Robin remembers his voice from the Ohara incident. Her Nakama defend Robin from Saturn. So yeah, like we saw in the previous chapter, Saturn was making his way up to the top of Lava Phase where the other group of the Straw Hats were. And Robin remembering Saturn's voice from Ohara, it's because we saw in the flashback that Saturn was the one who was talking to Professor Clover, explaining to him like, hey, you can't be researching the Void Century and all that stuff, gaslighting him and everyone else listening into thinking that it's more harm for the world if you uncover that stuff. We're keeping that sealed because we're protecting everyone, which is obviously BS. The Gorosei and Imu basically committed like massive genocide at that time to have control over the world that they currently do. So as for them defending Robin here, I don't know what they can really do. These are the weakest Straw Hats here. So I don't know, Usopp's going to do some slingshot stuff because he was already charging it up in the previous chapter. And then Nami can only do so much with Zeus and her climate tact. So yeah, well, I don't know. Somebody has to save them or something. I don't know. At the end of the chapter, Vegapunk's message starts and he says that this world will sink into the sea. Okay, so that's the big revelation. I don't know if he's going to say any more than that, but yes, this is somewhat of a shocker. I mean, if you're like super hardcore into One Piece and you're like a historian, you will already know that this is kind of alluded to be happening. Like there have been hints throughout the story that the sea level has been rising and that it was actually way lower many years ago than what it is now. There are plenty of hints throughout the story that show us that. Now, why is that happening? Still not fully explained. It very likely has something to do with Imu using Uranus or the Mother Flame, which is just the fuel source for it, in my opinion. Like the more islands that she destroys, or the more impacts into the ocean and the earth that she makes with that thing, it like raises the sea level. It's also possibly caused by Imu using her devil fruit that may or may not involve the ability to manipulate water to some extent. And if it's not that, then I guess it's something else that Imu is doing. Because I also think something with the Void Century probably involves a flood to some extent. And if the world will sink into the sea, maybe it's what Imu's ultimate plan is for the world, possibly. And if it's not Imu and it's just some kind of natural disaster, then that seems kind of anticlimactic. But then maybe I guess that's something that everyone can come together to fight against. Like Luffy at the end of the story saves Imu and they all, I don't know, work together to stop this big flood or something. I don't know. I just hope that it's ultimately Imu's plan. I guess that would be more fitting for the final ticking clock of the series. Like how we've been talking about, there's always like a ticking clock in these big arcs, especially towards the end of them. I guess in the final one, it could be the world sinking into the sea and Luffy doing whatever he needs to do to stop it. But yeah, like I said, we'll go over more of this once we get the full summary. If you liked the video, guys, please give it a like. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.